Ladies and gentlemen, I'm the bearer of bad news concerning journalist Blessed Mhlanga. Mhlanga will be spending more nights in Zimbabwe's finest political detention facilities after Harare Magistrate Farai Gwatima denied him bail. The excuse? It is the usual nonsense. His release would, and I quote, put the nation in unrest and undermine peace and security. Close quote. Ah, yes. That famous phrase, wheeled out whenever the regime wants to silence someone without the inconvenience of a fair trial. If only the courts had this much enthusiasm when dealing with the real criminals. I mean the ones draining the national purse dry. But no, the legal system has been repurposed into a blunt instrument for crushing journalists, activists, and anyone whose existence makes the ruling elite uncomfortable. If you thought this was just an isolated case, let's take a walk down Zimbabwe's ever-growing symmetry of justice. Let's not forget how long it took for this ridiculous judgment to be delivered. Mhlanga's bail ruling was supposed to come on Thursday, February 27. His lawyers, his family, and the entire nation waited. They showed up at the court expecting justice, or at least whatever passes for justice in Zimbabwe these days. But surprise, the magistrate was nowhere to be found. The official reason? He had gone to a funeral.
We had attended the Broughton Magistrate's Court for purposes of noting the magistrate's ruling on Blessed Mhlanga's bail application. Regrettably, the court postponed delivery of that ruling. We were advised by a standing magistrate that the regular magistrate who had the bail application is facing a bereavement and therefore could not come to work because of that family tragedy. We were therefore asked to come back to court on Friday, the 28th of February 2025 for delivery of that ruling. Obviously, we are disappointed with this development because every day that passes with this journalist in custody is an elongation or perpetuation of his suffering for doing his work as a journalist. We sympathize with the circumstances of the magistrate, but we remain deeply aggrieved by the fact that the time within which our client is in custody has been made longer. So we wait with hope that when we come back tomorrow, bail will be granted and that blessing will find his liberty once again. He's been very strong in the face of adversity and hardship, and we encourage other members of the press to take courage from the bravery that's being exhibited by their colleague Blessed. We do realize that the arrest and detention of journalists has a chilling effect on the practice of journalism, and we urge everyone to resist the temptation to cow down or to retreat and start thinking that it's a crime to practice journalism. It is not a crime, and we hope that will be vindicated in this position. Thank you.
What was that report which was handed by the prosecution?
So when we made a bail application on the 26th of February 2025, we made various complaints against the police, particularly the fact that police were unprofessional in detaining a person who had voluntarily walked into the police station. And we also complained about the conditions of detention. It was our assertion that the conditions of detention at Harare Central Police Station are below the standard that is expected. We deem the conditions at the cells at that police station to be inhuman and degrading. We specifically mentioned or cited the fact that there are no beds, there is no linen, they do not get blankets and other comforts that are afforded to human beings. We complained about the state of the ceilings, and we complained about the lack of food at the police station, the lack of water, and the prosecution of the state was ordered to investigate these allegations. So they came back today with a report. The report is yet to be seen by the magistrate who is presiding over the bail proceedings. It would be unprofessional for me to be discussing the contents of that report before it has been presented to the magistrate.
Convenient. Because really, what are the chances that a magistrate handling such a politically charged case would just so happen to have a funeral to attend on Judgment Day? Sounds more like a pit stop at Jongwe House for further instructions. And true to script, when he finally reappeared, the verdict was exactly what we all expected. Bail denied. The reason? National security. You mean to tell us that a journalist armed with nothing but a pen and a microphone is a greater threat to national security than corrupt ministers, gold smugglers, and violent ruling party thugs? The absurdity is breathtaking. This isn't just about Blessed Mhlang. This is about Job Scala, who spent 500 days in Chikurubi for speaking his mind. It's about Hopewell Chingono, arrested for exposing corruption while the thieves he exposed enjoyed their loot in peace. It's about the MDC activists accused of killing a police officer in a case so flimsy it should have collapsed on day one. It's about every Zimbabwean who has ever been silenced by a regime that fears the truth. For the past 3 years, the magistrates at Rotenro have turned the courts into a dystopian theater of oppression, where government critics are the main act and justice is the first casualty. Opposition figures and journalists don't walk into a courtroom hoping for a fair hearing. They walk in knowing their lambs being led to the slaughter. The magistrates aren't even trying to hide it anymore. Bail is no longer a constitutional right. It's a privilege reserved for the politically connected. If you are a ZANU-PF official caught red-handed committing a crime, the courts will bend over backwards to set you free. But if you are an opposition activist, congratulations. You have just won an all-expenses-paid trip to Zimbabwe's most miserable holding cells. And if you think that's an exaggeration, let's roll out the evidence. Remember Job Scala? Of course you do. How could anyone forget the man who spent over 500 days rotting in Chukurubi maximum security prison without trial, all for the crime of talking? His bail applications were rejected so many times that they should have just printed a template written bail denied, national security risk. Meanwhile, the real criminals, the ones siphoning public funds, smuggling gold and looting natural resources, were getting VIP treatment in the very same justice system. Still think this isn't systematic persecution? Then explain how a man like Scala, who never held a weapon in his life, was treated like a dangerous fugitive, while actual thieves were escorted to freedom with smiles and handshakes. If you think his case was bad, buckle up. It gets worse. Hopewell Chingono, the award-winning journalist, has also had a front row seat to Zimbabwe's weaponized judiciary. In 2020, he was arrested for exposing corruption in COVID-19 procurement. His real crime? embarrassing the government by telling the truth. He was denied bail repeatedly, forced to endure the filth of Zimbabwean prisons, while ZANU-PF looters walked free. Ironically, the very people he exposed, like Obadiah Moyo, who oversaw the 60 million COVID-19 looting spree, were granted bail in a record time. Apparently, exposing corruption is a national security threat, but committing it is not. The hypocrisy is so thick you could cut it with a machete. But don't put your knives away just yet. There's still more flesh to carve from the rotting justice system. Remember the MDC activists accused of murdering a police officer in 2020? They were held in custody for nearly 2 years, with bail denied at every turn. The state kept changing the charges, hoping something would stick. Their real crime was being members of an opposition party in a country where that is basically treason. Meanwhile, ZANU-PF members caught on camera assaulting citizens, looting state resources, or engaging in blatant electoral fraud are not only freed, but often promoted. You need more proof? Let's talk about Henrietta Rushwaya, the ZANU-PF linked gold smuggler caught at the airport with 6 kilograms of gold. Instead of being locked up like the MDC activists, she was back in the comfort of her home before the ink on her arrest warrant had dried. It's almost as if the justice system isn't about justice at all. The list goes on. Joanna Mamombe, Cecilia Chimbiri, and Netai Maroa were abducted, tortured, and then charged for faking their own abduction. Because in Zimbabwe, being a victim of state-sponsored brutality is apparently a crime. Their bail applications were dragged through the courts for months, while their abusers walked free. The message was clear. If you dare to challenge the regime, not only will they break you, but they will also make you the villain of your own torture story. And still, there are people who ask if Zimbabwe has a justice system. Oh, it does. It just works in reverse. If you are a ZANU-PF official, your crimes don't count. The courts will find a way to release you, whether through bail, drop charges, or mysteriously lost case files. But if you are a government critic, you don't stand a chance. The law will be weaponized against you. Your bail applications will be denied on the flimsiest grounds. And your only ticket out of prison will be a presidential pardon that will never come. And they do all this with a straight face, as if the whole country can't see through their shameless double standards. Blessed Mhlanga's case is just the latest addition to Zimbabwe's ever-expanding museum of judicial atrocities. It's the same script, the same actors, and the same sickening plot twist where the innocent suffer while the guilty thrive. But here's the thing, no matter how many journalists they jail, no matter how many activists they silence, no matter how many court rulings they manipulate, the truth has a way of fighting back. And when that truth finally wins, the very same magistrates who are playing along today will have nowhere to hide. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo set off a global war because the oppressed had finally had enough. Is this not Zimbabwe's Sarajevo moment? How many more activists must be jailed? How many more journalists must be silenced? How many more opposition leaders must be persecuted before the people of Zimbabwe say enough is enough? Subscribe to Zimwaves TV, because when history is being written, you need to be on the right side.